Let's talk about the Islamic Republic of Iran. Back in 2022, the Islamic Republic's morality police arrested Mahsa Amini, a woman just 1 week shy of 23 years old, for the high crime of not wearing a headscarf in public. And apparently, forcing women to cover their heads is a pretty big deal for Islamic theocrats. During the Islamic Revolution of Iran, journalist Oriana Fallaci asked Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini about his mandates, and the exchange went like this. "Please, Imam, there are many things I still want to ask you. For example, this chador that you made me put on to come to you, and which you insist all women must wear. Tell me, why do you force them to hide themselves, all bundled up under these uncomfortable and absurd garments, making it hard to work and move about? And yet, even here, women have demonstrated that they are equal to men. They fought just like the men, were imprisoned and tortured. They too helped make the revolution. The women who contributed to the revolution were and are women with the Islamic dress. Not elegant women all made up like you, who go around all uncovered, dragging behind them a tail of men. The coquettes who put on makeup and go into the street showing off their necks, their hair, their shapes, did not fight against the Shah. They never did anything good. Not those. They do not know how to be useful, neither socially, nor politically, nor professionally. And this is because by uncovering themselves, they distract men and upset them. Then they distract and upset even each other." That's not true, Imam. In any case, I am not only talking about the piece of clothing, but what it represents. That is, the condition of segregation into which women have been cast once again after the revolution. The fact that they cannot study at university with men, or work with men, for example, or go to the beach or go to a swimming pool with men. They have to take a dip apart in their chadors. By the way, how do you swim in a chador? This is none of your business. Our customs are none of your business. If you do not like Islamic dress, you are not obliged to wear it, because Islamic dress is for good and proper young women. That is very kind of you, Imam. And since you said so, I'm going to take off this stupid medieval rag right now. There. Done. Mahsa Amini would end up dying in morality police custody, with authorities insisting that Amini went into a coma after having a heart attack at age 23, whereas witnesses claim that Amini was beaten by police. Amini's death inspired nationwide protests against the regime's dress codes, and while the morality police temporarily backed down, it has since been reported that the morality police are back in full force, with many Iranian protesters being jailed or executed. And this is just scratching the surface on how horrible the Islamic Republic treats its subjects. Earlier in 2022, 2 gay Iranians were executed for sodomy, and earlier this year, 2 men were executed in Iran for blasphemy. It's horrible enough that the Islamic Republic has its boots on the necks of 88 million people in Iran. But the Islamic Republic has sought to export its shitty-ass revolution since its inception, stating so in its constitution. One of the Islamic Republic's first targets was Lebanon, partly due to the country's sizable yet minority Shia Muslim population, which was going through a civil war during the 1980s. That involved PLO leader Yasser Arafat orchestrating attacks against Israel from Lebanon, prompting a retaliatory military invasion from Israel into Lebanon, which intellectuals and military leaders from Iran, along with their sympathizers in Lebanon, would use as a pretext to bring the Islamic Revolution into Lebanon, with many residents in parts of Lebanon viewing Iran's Revolutionary Guards and Khomeini's admirers as foreign invaders, with cities like Baalbek turning into Little Tehran, with Iranian flags being flown and Khomeini posters being plastered, and new radio stations being established to broadcast daily sermons, and women being forced to cover up, and alcohol and music and wedding celebrations being banned, and for good measure, the Revolutionary Guard setting up a religious military training camp, which would be the beginning of the terrorist group Hezbollah, modeled after a militant group from Iran by the same name, meaning Party of God, with two primary goals being to obliterate Israel and to establish an Islamic theocracy in Lebanon like Ayatollah Khomeini's. And now Hezbollah has something like 100,000 trained fighters. They also control territory in Lebanon and, as a political party, hold positions in Lebanon's government. Now let's talk about Hamas, the group that recently massacred over 1,400 people in Israel, which was founded in 1988 and, according to their covenant, seeks to obliterate Israel, saying that Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Also saying that our struggle against the Jews is very great and very serious. Where have we heard this before? Also saying that the Prophet, Allah bless him and grant him salvation, has said that the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews. And like Hezbollah, Hamas seeks to establish an Islamic theocracy, saying that Allah is its target, the Prophet is its model, the Quran is its constitution, jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. What more proof does anyone need that this is a genocidal death cult? Yeah, this is the group that the people of Gaza decided was best able to govern and represent them internationally in 2006 when they voted Hamas into power, to the surprise and chagrin of many, including then US President George W. Bush, who was willing to allow Hamas to participate in the Gaza elections because Bush thought that if people were given democracy, that they would never vote in theocratic dictators hell-bent on annihilating their neighbors.
You absolutely suck!
Hamas is also funded and supported by the Islamic Republic of Iran, because despite any differences that the two may have, Hamas and the Islamic Republic share the goal of destroying Israel. I mean, just look at some of the insanity that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei posts on social media.
Israel is a hideous entity in the Middle East which will undoubtedly be annihilated. Why should and how can Israel be eliminated? Ayatollah Khamenei's answer to 9 key questions. The Holocaust is an event whose reality is uncertain, and if it happened, it's uncertain how it has happened. Since day one, Zionists turned occupied Palestine into a base for terrorism. Israel isn't a country, it's a terrorist camp against Palestinians and other Muslim nations. Fighting this despotic regime is fighting against oppression and terrorism, and this is everyone's responsibility.
Blow it out your ass.
And just days before the attacks on Israel on October 7th, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was tweeting about how Zionism is dying. Now maybe that's just one big coincidence. After all, the Ayatollah has a long history of posting anti-Semitic genocidal thoughts. Or maybe he knew that something was about to happen. At the time of recording this video, It's still unclear how involved the Islamic Republic was with helping Hamas with these attacks. According to this article on the Wall Street Journal, Iran's Revolutionary Guard was working with Hamas as late as August. But Hamas insists that it was working alone, not that I give them any benefit of doubt, while Iran says it supports the attacks but did not direct them. And United States and European national security advisors seem unsure about how involved Tehran was. There have also been reports of the leader of Hamas meeting with Iran's foreign minister in Qatar just days after the attacks. And there's been speculation that the timing of all of this makes sense because the war has now disrupted Israel's normalization talks with Saudi Arabia. Either way, even if nobody in Iran gave the green light or ordered these attacks, given the history of financial and strategic support for Hamas, the Islamic Republic is responsible for what Hamas has done to Israel. Not to mention whatever horrors that Hamas inflicts on innocent people in Gaza. The Islamic Republic is a regime that has no right to govern over Iran, much less spread their flavor of theocracy beyond its borders, and acquire territory by conquest or by proxy via groups like Hezbollah, and helping fellow theocratic maniacs like Hamas, simply because they want to see Israel and all of its inhabitants destroyed. And this brings me to all of the disingenuous asshats in places like America and the United Kingdom and Canada and Australia and other taken for granted civilized countries who often post on social media or take to the streets claiming to oppose stuff like occupation and oppression and genocide, claiming to be in favor of wonderful things like liberation and freedom. And yet the ire that we see at a lot of these demonstrations and posts on social media are directed at Israel, the freest country in the Middle East, who also seems to be the most willing country in the Middle East to give up territory for the sake of being left the fuck alone. It is rather telling that all of these demonstrations supposedly against occupation and oppression and genocide are never directed at the Islamic Republic of Iran, who imposes theocracy on 88 million people, while loudly and proudly telling the rest of the world that they seek to export their flavor of theocracy, using militant groups like Hezbollah to take over regions of Lebanon, while committing itself to the destruction of Israel, which, if they were ever successful, would do anything but liberate or grant freedom to the people left in modern-day Israel. The Islamic Republic also supports Hamas, who imposes their flavor of theocracy on 2+ million people in Gaza, while also committing itself to the destruction of Israel, which, if they were ever successful, would do anything but liberate or grant freedom to the people who are left in modern-day Israel. I also see a lot of complaining about how Israel has shut off utilities to Gaza, yet we never see these demonstrators or protesters or activists or intellectuals complain much whenever the Islamic Republic brags about helping Hamas dig up water pipes in Gaza so that they can use the material to make rockets to attack civilians with. And often these rockets fall short of striking civilians in Israel, instead striking civilians in Gaza. And if anyone needs further evidence to show how full of shit these liberation advocates are, these demonstrators are starting to use terrorist paragliders as an image to rally around. Not to mention some of the horrible things that are shouted at some of these rallies.
Really makes you think.
If these demonstrators and activists and professional intellectuals were serious about liberating the people of Gaza, then they would be shouting for liberation from theocratic, genocidal maniacs like Hamas and its sponsors like the Islamic Republic of Iran.